The mist clung to the golden halls of Asgard like a shroud, heavy and unyielding. It was not the kind of mist that rolled in from the sea or rose from the rivers of Midgard. No, this was a mist born of the Norns, the weavers of fate, and it carried with it the weight of destinies yet unwritten. I stood on the edge of the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that connected Asgard to the other realms, and gazed into the swirling void below. My ravens, Hugin and Munin, perched on my shoulders, their black feathers glistening with dew. They whispered to me, as they always did, of secrets and shadows, of things seen and unseen. But today their whispers were different. Today they spoke of an end. "All-Father," Hugin croaked, his voice a low rasp in my ear. "The threads are fraying. The loom of the Norns trembles. The well stirs," Munin added, his tone urgent. "The waters remember what the world has forgotten." I clenched my spear, Gungnir, tighter in my hand. The raven's words were never idle, and their unease was a mirror of my own. For weeks now I had been haunted by visions, fragments of a future I could not yet comprehend. Flames consuming the world tree, Yggdrasil. The great wolf Fenrir breaking free of his chains. The serpent Jörmungandr rising from the depths to poison the skies. And through it all, the laughter of Loki, sharp and mocking, echoing in the void. I turned away from the Bifrost and made my way to the Hall of Valhalla, where the bravest of the slain feasted and prepared for the final battle. But even there, among the laughter and clashing of swords, I could not shake the feeling of dread that clung to me like a second shadow. The Norns were calling, and I could no longer ignore their summons. The Well of Urd lay deep within the roots of Yggdrasil, hidden from all but the most determined seekers. Its waters were said to hold the memories of the cosmos, the secrets of the past, present, and future. To drink from it was to glimpse the threads of fate themselves. But the well was not generous. It demanded a price, and that price was always steep. I found Mimir there, as I knew I would. His severed head, preserved by my magic, floated in the well's dark waters, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Mimir had been the wisest of the Aesir once, but his wisdom had come at a cost. "Odin," Mimir said, his voice echoing in the stillness. "You come seeking answers, but do you truly understand the questions?" I knelt by the well, my reflection rippling in the black water. "I have seen the end, Mimir. Ragnarok, the fall of the gods, the burning of the worlds. Tell me how to stop it." Mimir's laughter was bitter. "Stop it? You cannot stop what has already been woven into the fabric of existence. The Norns do not unravel their threads, Odin. They only weave them tighter. Then what am I to do?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Am I to sit idly by and watch as everything I have built is consumed by fire and chaos?" Mimir's gaze softened, and for a moment I saw the ghost of the friend he had once been. "You are the All-Father, Odin. The burden of wisdom is yours to bear. But wisdom is not given freely. It is bought with sacrifice." I knew what he meant. The well had already taken his life. What would it take from me? I dipped my hand into the water, and the cold bit into my skin like 1,000 needles. The well's power surged through me, and I saw the world tree, its branches aflame. The great wolf Fenrir, his jaws closing around the sun. The serpent Jörmungandr, his venom dripping into the seas. And Loki, his eyes gleaming with malice as he led the armies of the dead against the gates of Asgard. The vision was so vivid, so real, that I cried out and pulled my hand from the water. My palm was raw and blistered, as though I had plunged it into fire. "The price," Mimir said, his voice a whisper now. "The well demands its due." I looked at him, my heart pounding. "What must I give?" Mimir's eyes bore into mine. "Only you can answer that, Odin. But remember this, the well does not take lightly. It will strip you bare, piece by piece, until there is nothing left but the truth." I hesitated, but only for a moment. The fate of the 9 worlds hung in the balance, and I could not turn away. "Not now." I leaned over the well and drank deeply from its dark waters. The taste was bitter, like ash and iron, and it burned my throat as it went down. But with it came knowledge, flashes of insight, fragments of understanding. I saw the threads of fate, tangled and twisted, and I knew that I alone could unravel them. But as the visions faded, I felt something else, a hollowing, a loss. I looked down at my hand and saw that my eye, my right eye, was gone. In its place was an empty socket, raw and weeping. The well had claimed its first sacrifice. I stumbled back from the well, my vision swimming. Mimir's head watched me, his expression unreadable. "You have taken the first step," he said. "But the path is long and the cost will be greater than you can imagine." I nodded, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The pain was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the weight of what I had seen. The end was coming, and I alone could shape what came after. But as I turned to leave, I felt a presence stirring in the depths of the well. A shadow, ancient and hungry, awakened by my sacrifice. The price of wisdom, I realized, was not just what I had given. It was what I had unleashed. And the 9 worlds would never be the same. The pain in my empty socket was a constant reminder of the price I had paid. It throbbed with every step I took, a dull ache that seemed to echo the deeper loss I felt within. My ravens, Hugin and Munin, flew ahead of me, their wings cutting through the mist that still clung to Asgard like a shroud. They were silent now, their whispers replaced by the weight of what I had seen at the Well of Erd. I returned to my hall, Valaskjolf, where my high seat, Hlithskjolf, overlooked the 9 worlds. From here, I could see all that transpired in the realms, mortals toiling in Midgard, giants plotting in Jotunheim, and the dead feasting in Valhalla. But today, the sight brought me no comfort. The threads of fate were fraying, and the loom of the Norns trembled. I could feel it in the air, a tension that crackled like lightning before a storm. I sat upon my throne, my spear Gungnir resting across my knees, and closed my one remaining eye. The visions from the well still haunted me. Flames consuming Yggdrasil, Fenrir's jaws closing around the sun, Loki's laughter echoing in the void. But there was something else, something I had not noticed before. A shadow, darker than the rest, lurking at the edges of my vision. It was the presence I had felt stirring in the depths of the well, ancient and hungry. "Hugin," I called, my voice hoarse. "What do you see?" The raven landed on my shoulder, his feathers brushing against my cheek. "The threads are tangled, All-Father. The Norns weave, but their hands falter." "And Munin?" I asked, turning to the other raven. "What do you remember?" Munin perched on the arm of my throne, his head tilted as if listening to a distant sound. "The well remembers, but its memories are fractured. Like a shattered mirror, each piece reflects a different truth." I frowned. "A shattered mirror, what does it mean?" Before either raven could answer, the doors to my hall swung open and Loki strode in. His steps were light, almost playful, but his eyes gleamed with mischief. He was dressed in his usual garb of green and gold, his hair a wild tangle of red. In his hand, he carried a small, ornate box, its surface etched with runes that glowed faintly in the dim light. "Odin," Loki said, his voice dripping with mockery. "You look diminished. What happened to your eye? Did you lose it in a game of wits, or did you simply tire of seeing the world as it is?" I gripped Gungnir tighter, my knuckles whitening. "What do you want, Loki?" He smirked and held up the box. "A gift, All-Father. A token of my admiration. Or perhaps my pity." I rose from my throne, my gaze narrowing. "I have no time for your games, trickster. Speak plainly or leave." Loki's smirk widened and he opened the box. Inside was a shard of glass, its edges jagged and sharp. It gleamed with an unnatural light, and as I looked at it, I felt a strange pull, as though it were calling to me. "This," Loki said, holding up the shard, "is a piece of the shattered mirror. A relic from a time before the 9 worlds, when the cosmos was young and the gods were but dreams in the mind of the void. It holds secrets, Odin. Secrets even you do not know." I stepped closer, my one eye fixed on the shard. "And why would you bring this to me?" Loki's expression softened, though his eyes still gleamed with mischief. "Because, old friend, even I have my limits. The end is coming and I would see it delayed, for a time." I reached for the shard, but Loki pulled it back, his smirk returning. Old father. Nothing is free. Not even for you. What do you want?" I asked, my voice low. Loki's gaze turned serious, and for a moment, the mask of the trickster slipped. "A promise. When the end comes and the threads of fate unravel, you will remember this moment. You will remember that I, too, played my part." I hesitated, then nodded. "You have my word." Loki handed me the shard, and as my fingers closed around it, I felt a surge of power. The visions returned, sharper and more vivid than before. I saw the shattered mirror, whole and unbroken, reflecting the cosmos in its entirety. And then I saw it shatter, its pieces scattering across the 9 worlds, each one holding a fragment of the truth. But there was more. I saw the shadow from the well, its form shifting and writhing. It was not a single entity, but many, bound together by a force I could not comprehend. And it was growing stronger, feeding on the sacrifices made at the well. I stumbled back, the shard slipping from my grasp. Loki caught it with a laugh, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "Careful, O father," he said. "The truth can be a dangerous thing." I glared at him, my hand instinctively going to my empty socket. "What do you know of the shadow?" Loki's smirk faded, and for a moment he looked almost afraid. "The shadow is older than the gods, Odin. Older than the 9 worlds. It is the void that existed before creation, and it hungers to return. Your sacrifices at the well have awakened it, and now it seeks to consume all that is." I felt a chill run down my spine. "How do we stop it?" Loki's expression darkened, and he turned away. "We don't. Not alone. But perhaps there is a way to delay it. To buy the 9 worlds a little more time." "How?" I demanded. Loki glanced back at me, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of mischief and desperation. "By finding the other shards of the shattered mirror. Each one holds a piece of the truth, and together, they may hold the key to stopping the shadow. But be warned, Odin. The shards are not easily found, and the price for each one will be steep." I clenched my fists, my mind racing. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but I had no choice. The fate of the 9 worlds depended on it. "Where do we begin?" I asked. Loki's smirk returned, and he held up the shard. "Where else? The beginning." As we left the hall, I felt the weight of the task ahead settle on my shoulders. The shadow loomed in the corners of my vision, a constant reminder of what was at stake. But there was something else, too, a glimmer of hope. The shattered mirror held the key, and if we could piece it together, perhaps we could avert the end. But as I followed Loki into the mist, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadow was watching us, waiting for its moment to strike. And the 9 worlds would never be the same. The mist of Asgard clung to us like a second skin as Loki and I ventured beyond the golden halls, into the wilds where the roots of Yggdrasil twisted and writhed like serpents. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient magic, and the faint glow of the shard in Loki's hand cast eerie shadows on the gnarled bark of the world tree. "Where are we going, trickster?" I asked, my voice low and wary. The pain in my empty socket still throbbed, a constant reminder of the price I had paid at the Well of Erd. Loki glanced back at me, his smirk never faltering. "To the beginning, Allfather. Or as close to it as we can get." "The beginning," I echoed, my brow furrowing. He held up the shard, its jagged edges catching the faint light. The shattered mirror was whole once, reflecting the cosmos in its entirety. But when it broke, its pieces scattered across the 9 worlds, each one holding a fragment of the truth. "The shard I gave you is but one piece. To find the others, we must retrace the steps of creation itself." I frowned, my mind racing. "And where does creation begin?" Loki's smirk widened. "In the void, of course. The Ginnungagap," the name sent a chill through me. The Ginnungagap was the primordial abyss, the yawning chasm that existed before the 9 worlds. It was the birthplace of all things, and the grave of all things if the shadow had its way. "You expect us to journey to the Ginnungagap?" I asked, my voice tinged with disbelief. Loki shrugged. "Not all of us. Just you." I stopped in my tracks, my grip tightening on Gungnir. "Explain yourself, Loki." He turned to face me, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "The Ginnungagap is not a place, Odin. It is a state of being. To enter it, you must shed your physical form and become one with the void. Only then can you retrieve the next shard." I stared at him, my one eye narrowing. "And what will you be doing while I risk my existence in the abyss?" Loki's smirk returned. "Oh, I'll be here keeping an eye on things. Someone has to make sure the shadow doesn't sneak up on us while you're gone." I wanted to argue, to demand that he accompany me, but I knew it was futile. Loki was the trickster, and his ways were as unpredictable as the winds. If he said this was the path, then it was the path. "Very well," I said, my voice heavy with resignation. "How do I enter the Ginnungagap?" Loki held out the shard, its glow intensifying as he spoke. "This shard is a key, Odin. It will guide you to the next piece of the mirror. But to use it, you must surrender yourself completely. Let go of your fears, your doubts, your very sense of self. Only then can you step into the void. I took the shard from him, its surface cool against my skin. The moment my fingers closed around it, I felt a surge of power, a pull that seemed to come from deep within me. The world around me blurred, the mist and the trees and the roots of Yggdrasil melting away until there was nothing but darkness. And then I was falling. The void was not empty. It was alive, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed to echo the beating of my own heart. Shapes flickered in the darkness, shadows that were not shadows, whispers that were not whispers. I felt a presence, vast and ancient, watching me from the depths. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice swallowed by the void. The presence did not answer, but I felt its gaze intensify, its weight pressing down on me like a mountain. I clutched the shard tighter, its glow the only light in the endless darkness. "I am Odin," I said, my voice trembling. "All-Father of the Aesir. I seek the shards of the shattered mirror to save the 9 worlds from the shadow." The presence shifted, and I felt a surge of energy, a current that pulled me deeper into the void. The shard in my hand grew warmer, its light brighter, and I realized it was guiding me. I followed its pull, drifting through the darkness until I came to a place where the void seemed to ripple, like the surface of a still pond disturbed by a stone. In the center of the ripple was a shard identical to the one I held, its edges jagged and sharp. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against its surface, and the moment I touched it, the void erupted in light. I was no longer in the Ginnungagap. I stood in a vast hall, its walls made of shimmering crystal that reflected the cosmos in its entirety. The shattered mirror, whole and unbroken, hung before me, its surface rippling like water. And then it spoke. "Odin," it said, its voice a chorus of whispers. "You seek the truth, but do you understand the cost?" I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "I have already paid the price. My eye, my voice, my memories, all sacrificed for wisdom. What more must I give?" The mirror's surface rippled, and I saw myself reflected in its depths, not as I was, but as I could be. A figure of light and shadow, of creation and destruction. "The shards are not just pieces of the mirror," it said. "They are pieces of you. To find them, you must confront the truths you have buried, the secrets you have hidden even from yourself." I frowned, my mind racing. What truths? What secrets? The mirror's surface shifted, and I saw a vision, a memory I had long forgotten. I was young, not yet the All-Father, standing before the Well of Erd for the first time. Mimir was there, whole and alive, his eyes filled with sorrow. "You cannot outwit the well, Odin," he said. "It will take everything from you, and still you will hunger for more." I had laughed then, confident in my power and my wisdom. But now, seeing the memory through the mirror's gaze, I realized the truth. Mimir had not been warning me. He had been pleading. "You sacrificed him," the mirror said, its voice cold. "You let the well take him so that you could gain its knowledge. And now you seek to undo what you have done." I stumbled back, the weight of the revelation crushing me. "I did not know," I whispered. "I did not understand. Ignorance is no excuse," the mirror replied. "The shadow you awakened is the consequence of your actions. To stop it, you must face the truth of who you are and who you have been." I clenched my fists, my heart heavy with guilt and regret. What must I do? The mirror's surface rippled, and the shard I held began to glow brighter. "Take the shard," it said. "But know this, each piece you recover will strip away another layer of your illusion. By the end, there will be nothing left but the truth." I hesitated, then reached out and took the shard. The moment my fingers closed around it, the vision faded, and I was back in the void, the second shard glowing in my hand. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the wilds of Asgard, Loki standing over me with a smirk. "Welcome back, O Father," he said. "Did you find what you were looking for?" I sat up, the 2 shards clutched in my hands. "I found more than I bargained for." Loki's smirk faded, and for a moment he looked almost concerned. "And the shadow?" I looked down at the shards, their light flickering like a dying flame. "It is growing stronger. And it is not alone." Loki's expression darkened, and he turned away. "Then we have no time to waste. The next shard awaits." I nodded, my mind heavy with the weight of what I had learned. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but I had no choice. The fate of the 9 worlds depended on it. And the shadow was watching. The 2 shards of the shattered mirror pulsed in my hands, their light flickering like dying stars. Each one carried a fragment of the truth, a piece of the cosmic puzzle I had been desperate to solve. But the cost had been steep, my eye, my voice, and now the weight of my own guilt. The shadow loomed ever closer, its presence a constant reminder of the price I had paid for wisdom. Loki stood beside me, his usual smirk replaced by a rare expression of solemnity. "The next shard lies in the heart of Helheim," he said, his voice low. "But be warned, Allfather. The realm of the dead is not kind to the living." I nodded, my one eye fixed on the horizon. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but I had no choice. The fate of the 9 worlds depended on it. The journey to Helheim was a descent into darkness. The air grew colder with each step, and the light of the shards seemed to dim as we approached the gates of the underworld. The bridge to Helheim, Jalarbru, was guarded by the giantess Modguth, her massive form blocking our path. "Who dares enter the realm of the dead?" she bellowed, her voice echoing like thunder. I stepped forward, the shards glowing faintly in my hands. "I am Odin, Allfather of the Aesir. I seek the shard of the shattered mirror that lies within Helheim." Modguth's eyes narrowed, and she leaned down, her face inches from mine. "The dead do not part with their treasures lightly, Odin. What will you give in exchange?" I hesitated, then held out one of the shards. "This, a piece of the shattered mirror, a fragment of the truth." Modguth's gaze softened, and she stepped aside. "Very well, but know this, the dead remember and they do not forgive." Helheim was a realm of shadows and whispers, where the souls of the dead wandered aimlessly, their faces hollow and their eyes empty. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the ground beneath our feet was cold and lifeless. Loki and I made our way to the Hall of Hel, the goddess of the underworld. She sat upon her throne, her pale face framed by dark hair, her eyes gleaming with a cold light. "Odin," she said, her voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "What brings the Allfather to my realm?" I stepped forward, the shards in my hands. "I seek the shard of the shattered mirror that lies within Helheim. The fate of the 9 worlds depends on it." Hel's gaze shifted to the shards, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something, fear, perhaps, or recognition. "The shattered mirror," she murmured. "A relic from a time before the 9 worlds. Why do you seek it?" "To stop the shadow," I said, my voice firm. "To save the 9 worlds from destruction." Hel leaned back in her throne, her expression unreadable. "And what will you give in exchange for the shard?" I hesitated, then held out one of the shards. "This, a piece of the shattered mirror, a fragment of the truth." Hel's eyes narrowed, and she shook her head. "No, Odin. The dead do not desire truth. They desire life." I frowned, my mind racing. "What do you mean?" Hel rose from her throne and stepped down to stand before me. "To retrieve the shard, you must give up a piece of your life force. A sacrifice, not of memory or wisdom, but of your very essence." I clenched my fists, the weight of her words settling on my shoulders. "And if I refuse?" Hel's gaze hardened. "Then the shard remains here, and the 9 worlds will fall." I looked at Loki, who stood silently beside me. His expression was unreadable, but I could see the tension in his posture. He knew, as I did, that this was the only way. "Very well," I said, my voice heavy with resignation. "Take what you must." Hel nodded, and she reached out, her hand hovering over my chest. I felt a sharp pain, like a blade piercing my heart, and then a coldness spread through me, sapping my strength. The shard in my hand glowed brighter, and I felt a surge of power as Hel withdrew her hand, a faint light flickering in her palm. "The shard is yours," she said, her voice soft. "But remember, Odin, the dead do not forget." The 3rd shard joined the others in my hands, its light merging with theirs to form a faint, pulsating glow. But the cost had been steep. My life force, my essence, was diminished. I could feel the shadow growing stronger, feeding on my sacrifices. "We must hurry," Loki said, his voice urgent. "The final shard lies in the heart of Yggdrasil, where the roots of the world tree meet the well of Erd." I nodded, my strength waning with each step. The journey to the heart of Yggdrasil was a blur of pain and exhaustion, but I pressed on, driven by the knowledge that the fate of the 9 worlds depended on it. The heart of Yggdrasil was a place of immense power, where the roots of the world tree twisted and writhed like serpents. The well of Erd lay at its center, its dark waters pulsing with an ancient primordial energy. I knelt by the well, the 3 shards in my hands. The shadow loomed behind me, its presence a constant reminder of the price I had paid. "Mimir," I called, my voice hoarse. "I have come for the final shard." Mimir's head floated to the surface of the well, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "Odin," he said, his voice echoing in the stillness. "You have come far, but the final shard will demand the ultimate sacrifice." I nodded, my heart heavy with the weight of his words. "I know. What must I give?" Mimir's gaze softened, and for a moment I saw the ghost of the friend he had once been. "Your life, Odin. To retrieve the final shard, you must give up your life force, your very essence. Only then can the shattered mirror be made whole." I hesitated, then looked at Loki, who stood silently beside me. His expression was unreadable, but I could see the tension in his posture. He knew, as I did, that this was the only way. "Very well," I said, my voice heavy with resignation. "Take what you must." Mimir nodded, and he reached out, his hand hovering over my chest. I felt a sharp pain, like a blade piercing my heart, and then a coldness spread through me, sapping my strength. The shards in my hands glowed brighter, and I felt a surge of power as Mimir withdrew his hand, a faint light flickering in his palm. "The final shard is yours," he said, his voice soft. "But remember, Odin, the cycle of creation and destruction is eternal." The 4 shards merged in my hands, their light merging to form a faint, pulsating glow. The shattered mirror was whole once more, its surface rippling like water. And then it spoke. "Odin," it said, its voice a chorus of whispers. "You have paid the ultimate price. The shattered mirror is whole, and the shadow is banished. But remember, the cycle of creation and destruction is eternal. The 9 worlds will rise and fall, but the seeds of a new world will be sown from the ashes." I nodded, my strength waning with each breath. "I understand." The mirror's surface rippled, and I saw a vision, a new world born from the ashes of the old. The gods were gone, but their legacy lived on in the hearts of mortals. And then the vision faded, and I was back in the heart of Yggdrasil, the shattered mirror whole in my hands. I returned to Asgard, the shattered mirror in my hands. The gods gathered around me, their faces filled with awe and reverence. "The shadow is banished," I said, my voice heavy with the weight of my sacrifice. "But remember, the cycle of creation and destruction is eternal. The 9 worlds will rise and fall, but the seeds of a new world will be sown from the ashes." The gods nodded, their expressions solemn. They knew, as I did, that the price of wisdom was steep, but the rewards were eternal. And as I looked out over the 9 worlds, I felt a sense of peace. The shadow was gone, but the cycle of creation and destruction would continue. And the 9 worlds would never be the same.